I spent the better part of the holiday going down the AI rabbit hole. OpenAI announced the O3 announcement just before Christmas, and that kind of was the catalyst for me. And I don't think anybody has any idea what's going to happen over the next 10 years, and I certainly don't. But a couple of thoughts that I thought might be relevant. Take it with a grain of salt. But one, I think using the tools is a must. Folks might be right, roles might be ultimately replaced or whatever, but I think it's very likely that they will at least be augmented in the short to medium term. And the folks that know how to use the tools are going to be much better positioned than the folks that don't. Number two, think about your pricing models. Definitely true for professional services, but I think in many areas, there's going to be a lot of downward price pressure. And so any arbitrage opportunity that you have by using these tools, I think is going to be short lived just because your client will know how to use them too if they don't already. And so discussions, I think, around pricing need to start now, not later. Number three, you are not your work. So thankfully, in hindsight, I had to learn this lesson kind of the hard way. A couple of years ago, I had an 18-month sabbatical of sorts where I left my previous company before starting my new one and had to try to figure out who I was. And I think I had grafted my identity to my work way more than I thought I did. And I think many folks are going to face a similarly disorienting situation, especially in industries where our value is tied to our knowledge or what we think we know. And so I think the sooner you can start that psychological and emotional and spiritual and whatever transition, the better. Number four, I think crypto is going to become more important, not less. So if you imagine a world just awash in AI and robots, presumably they're going to all be interacting with each other and presumably they're going to want to transact with each other. And I would assume that they're going to be doing that using digital currency rather than physical currency. And so I don't know what that means in terms of which tokens would be successful in that world, but I think at a minimum, it makes sense to at least dip your toes in that area and allocate some percentage of your net worth, maybe in just the major protocols to start. That's a good way to learn. But yeah, I think that probably seems prudent. Number five, in terms of what happens next, again, I have no idea. But in a world where knowledge is effectively free and where potentially labor is effectively free, I don't know what becomes important. It seems like access to capital matters even more. There's a world where maybe we're all capital allocators in some fashion. I think relationships will probably matter even more. If you imagine an organization where the production or delivery is largely handled by AI, sales is probably a big piece of it, right? You want to be the one running the robots and selling to people. I would assume that would matter. Related to that, I think brand matters a lot more, both corporate brand and personal brand, like storytelling probably matters a lot more. Beyond that, I have no idea. I'd be curious what you think. And then the last bit is just optimism. I think it's going to get weird. It's going to get super weird, but I don't see any point in being gloomy about it, right? If the robots take over, you're certainly not going to stop it. And candidly, I think that's becoming less and less likely as we learn more. I think the upside is going to be pretty magical. The things that it's going to be able to do in terms of healthcare, in terms of medicine, in terms of whatever, I think it's going to be pretty fantastic. And I think it's going to unlock a tremendous amount of upside, but it's going to be super bumpy and um, probably industrial revolution-ish bumpy, which I think we probably would argue was ultimately good for society, but was a messy transition. So I think being resilient will be important, being creative will be important, being curious will be important, being optimistic will be important, asking what the opportunity is, constantly learning, staying agile, taking care of yourself physically, mentally, etc. Yeah, I think all that's going to be super important, but just getting in the habit of saying, what's the opportunity here rather than putting my head in the sand. Again, take all this great with a grain of salt. I have no idea if any of this is true, but I think there will be mountains of opportunity for the people that are open enough and smart enough to see it rather than putting their heads in the sand. And so I came out of the holidays more excited, not less. It's something I want to wrap my head around, something I want to help our clients wrap their heads around, something I want to help my kids wrap their heads around. But yeah, those are my thoughts.